Do you ever watch any of those presidential news conferences?
By accident. Or how you might be turning on the radio and hear it on C-SPAN radio.
Well, I was looking at one of them last night, and it was on Fox, but I just couldn't believe the incredible assertions of the press aide of the president saying that, well, after all, the al-Qaeda leadership has been decimated, and, you know, we've won the war kind of like on terror, and the terrorists really aren't the threat they used to be, when there are thousands of them. And the problem, ladies and gentlemen, we're facing right now is that we have a front from a group called ISIS that is rolling across northern Iraq. They're actually taking cities in Lebanon. They are on a fair way to taking over the large part of Syria. And here we're saying that there's nothing wrong.
And isn't ISIS supposed to be more fierce than al-Qaeda?
Worse, absolutely. They're vicious killers. But, I mean, it looks like, oh, we don't have any debt. We don't have a debt problem. We don't have a problem with terrorists. Well, the war you aren't hearing about in the American media, Islamic terrorists in northern Iraq are attacking the Kurds, our strongest allies.
The terrorists have already driven Christians out of the town of Mosul, and they're going after the Kurds as well. Dale Hurd has the story.
Free us from the terrorists, this Iraqi Kurd is begging, and Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has ordered his country's armed forces to help the Kurdish military battle a Sunni militant offensive in northern Iraq. The attacks by the Islamic group the Islamic State have caused tens of thousands of Christians and other religious minorities to flee their homes.
Thousands of Kurdish Yazidi people have been killed, and thousands have become refugees. 40,000 have fled their homes. Their town is controlled by the Islamic State, and their shrine has been blown up.
This is happening to one of America's strongest allies in the Middle East.
The Kurds love America.
CBN News senior international correspondent Gary Lane.
The Kurds have been a longtime ally of the United States. During the Iraq War, we could count on them to counter Saddam Hussein and to help the American forces there. And it's one of the only democracies in the area.
The Kurds believe they need their own state and America's protection. But support for the Kurds from the Obama administration has been lacking because other nations in the region, like Turkey, do not want to see an independent Kurdistan. Analysts say the threat to the Kurds raises the question of America's commitment to Iraq and its allies around the world, and whether the White House has the stomach to defend them. Meanwhile, the disintegration of Iraq continues.
It's already too late. We've seen the balkanization of Iraq. It's splitting up before our very eyes. It won't be long. You'll see a Sunnistan, a Kurdistan, and perhaps a Shiistan. It'll be three separate nations.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
We wonder why is the Obama administration, they're sort of acting like, well, there's no real problem over there. And this ISIS is just galloping territory and eating up territory and punishing Christians and beheading people. It is a slaughter of epic proportions. And we're saying, oh, well, the threat of terrorists is almost out of the way. Come off it. But those Kurds, ladies and gentlemen, I've been talking about it for months. The Kurds have been as staunch allies. They deserve their own state. Why would we want to hold together this rickety post-Ottoman Empire creation of the Brits and the Sykes-Picot showed? I mean, who cares about what happened right after World War I? It doesn't work any longer. Those people won't hold together. The Shiites hate the Sunnis hate the Shias. The Kurds are the innocent bystanders, and both sides want to work against them, and they're not going to meet together in a cohesive country. So why don't we get real? Let them take Kirkuk and the oil fields there. Let them sell their oil. And let's put Maliki on the shelf where he deserves to be permanently. Well, in other news, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas seems to be holding, at least for now. We have two reports that show the type of tactics Hamas terrorists have been using against Israel. And before we go to that story, I want to say something. I was horrified. You know, you just appalled. We have a former president. His name was Jimmy Carter. And the question with Barack Obama, is he going to force Carter out as the worst American president, or is Carter still going to be the worst despite Obama? The question is they're vying to the bottom. But Jimmy Carter came out and said he thinks Hamas is a legitimate organization. Now, I may have read that wrong, but it seemed to be in the press.
I am flabbergasted.
Well,
no,
of course you are.
He just said it.
He said it. It's in the press. Now, it may have been incorrect, so I'll stand to correct it if somebody wants to correct me, but it was in the press yesterday that he said it's a legitimate organization. Well, John Jessup has stories from Washington about what's going on.
Pat, Hamas was not only using mosques in the war against Israel, it also used a church compound to attack Israeli citizens. George Thomas has this exclusive report from inside Gaza.
Archbishop Alexios is Gaza's most prominent Christian leader. His decision to open his church to 2,000 Muslims escaping the war surprised many Gazans.
Christ tells us we must love each other, our neighbors and our enemies. No other religion says that except the Christian faith.
Alexios and the estimated 1,500 Christians who live in the Gaza Strip walk a fine line between trying to stay alive and the Bible's command to share God's love. Since Hamas's takeover of Gaza in 2007, human rights groups have accused Hamas of imposing strict Taliban-style Islamic laws.
Islam is the rule of this place, and whatever Hamas says, we must obey or face consequences.
Alexios is now concerned about what comes next after the guns fall silent and the rockets stop flying.
There's a lot of anger on the street. We need forgiveness and love to flow.
He took CBN News to the roof terrace outside his office. He showed us how militants reportedly used the church compound to launch rockets into Israel. He refused to discuss details on camera for security reasons, but days after the war started, Israeli missiles targeted an area close to the church's sanctuary. This is what's left of one of two minarets that used to stand tall here along the Gaza Strip, not too far from the Mediterranean. It was a major mosque. It was apparently hit by 7 Israeli missiles. The Israeli government makes the argument that places like mosques, hospitals, and densely populated areas are routinely used by Hamas to fire off their rockets. Just around the corner from the church, Mohammed sits in complete shock.
I picked up the phone and the Israeli army said, I have 5 minutes to get out of my house. They were going to destroy it.
This is what's left of Mohammed's 3-story apartment complex. He, his 5 brothers, and their families lived in the building. Word on the street is the brothers are reportedly tied to Hamas and used the apartment to store weapons, a claim Mohammed has denied.
The Israelis attack schools, they attack hospitals, they attack mosques. You ask them, they know why. I don't know why.
This week, Israel's military released a map of Gaza showing dozens of positions from which Hamas fired rockets. Dramatic footage from drones flying above the strip also show Hamas firing from populated areas. Back at the church, Bishop Alexios says he's not out to pick a fight with Hamas or Israel. He simply wants to serve people.
We're disciples of Jesus. We must give love to everyone without condition.
George Thomas, CBN News, the Gaza Strip.
And now Israel is pointing to proof that Hamas was using civilians as human shields against Israeli soldiers. Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip discovered a Hamas handbook illustrating how using people as shields could pay off. The manual on urban warfare says human shields causes trouble for Israeli soldiers trying to reduce civilian casualties. It says the shields give Israelis problems when they try to open fire on gunmen. The manual also says that Hamas benefits from Israel's burning of civilian homes. Well, the second missionary infected with the Ebola virus is back in the U.S. and receiving treatment at a hospital in Atlanta. Nancy Wrightbull arrived at Emory Hospital Tuesday, and early reports indicate she's showing signs of improvement. Her colleague, Dr. Kent Brantley, is also said to be getting better with the help of an experimental drug. Heather Sells traveled to Nancy Wrightbull's hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, to learn more about why she went to Africa and how her illness is affecting those closest to her.
59-year-old Nancy Wrightbull and her husband David are no newcomers to the mission field. They've worked around the world and as of last year with the missions organization SIM in Liberia. This war-torn country has few modern-day comforts and is known as a difficult mission post.
David and Nancy Wrightbull are two of the most humble people that I have ever met. Their concern is for sharing the gospel to the world.
Their missions pastor, Jim Cashwell, says the Wright-Balls recently felt called to use their gifts in administration and encouragement to help build up this hospital. It's desperately needed in a country where disease is common and doctors are few.
In Liberia, there are 50 doctors for 4 million people. They don't have the infrastructure because of the wars.
Nancy and her husband first felt the call to the mission field at a missions conference here at their home church in Charlotte more than 20 years ago. This spring, when Ebola began breaking out in Africa, the church asked them if they wanted to come home. Nancy and her husband said no.
We said, David and Nancy, let us bring you home. Let's wait until it gets safer before you return. And David and Nancy refused to come back because their statement was that they wanted to be where God had called them.
Not only did they stay, Nancy went to work on the front lines, helping to disinfect doctors and instruments used in the crisis.
You know, that's what Nancy was doing. When she's cleaning the instruments that are being used in the hospital, she's showing the love of Christ in a very practical way.
SIM President Bruce Johnson says the hope now is that Wright-Ball and Brantley will recover and that research around their treatment at Emory Hospital will ultimately lead to a cure.
Kent and Nancy are the kind of people that would say, I'm willing to do this, to sacrifice in order that many more would be saved.
As the world has watched this literal life and death battle unfold, back in Charlotte, Wright-Ball's church is also watching and learning.
The faith of David and Nancy shows a maturity that I think is teaching all of us. They know that God can move in at any time and can heal Nancy. But they also recognize that if God chooses to call her home, that He's going to bring a healing there as well. And that's the healing that we all hope for.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Go ye into all the world. Pat, talk about selfless dedication and devotion.
Well, it's extraordinary. And, you know, the fact that this happened in Liberia, you know, Liberia, as you remember, was started under President Monroe as a home for freed slaves. They thought they could set up a country, and it was called Liberia, a free country, and the capital is called Monrovia after President Monroe. And it has been a free country. It is a lot of English-speaking people, a lot of people from America, and it has been one that has had a somewhat of a democracy. They've had some bad people in charge, but nevertheless, despite corruption, it's been a fairly clean country. It surprises me that this Ebola outbreak has gotten on as far as it has, and I'm also want to ask prayer for those brave missionaries, and they're tremendous, tremendous people, and we commend their faith and their loyalty. And I might also say it's interesting that the cure that is being used, at least the experimental drug, is based on tobacco. Mm-hmm. They have specially grown young tobacco plants that they mix up to use.
See, something good can come from tobacco.
Well, amen.
But thank God, Pat, they are here in the U.S. getting the best treatment in the world in prayer.
Apparently, the thing of it is, you know, it used to be called Marford, and they thought that it was transmitted by bats, at least some of the people that got the stuff. And it was a dread thing where all the organs of the body break down and they begin to, quote, bleed out. Right. So apparently, if they can find treatment, if they can be given in bodily fluids, they can come through and their bodies can then resist the disease. The trouble is most people don't have that kind of care. So by going to Emory Hospital, these two missionaries are going to have the finest of care.
Well, we're praying for a total recovery.
And I have seen no problem at all in bringing them to America. People are standing in line saying, well, we shouldn't bring them here. Well, come on, you know. I've been over there in Africa when they had an Ebola breakout, and we were sending medicine, and I wasn't scared of Ebola, and I don't think the rest of America needs to be scared of it. It's a horrible disease, but nevertheless, those two brave missionaries are going to come through, and we're praying for them and encouraging we're encouraged by their sacrifice.
Amen, amen.
Well, John, what's next?
Pat, the Obama administration is looking for ways it can go around Congress and prevent American businesses from reincorporating in other countries so they don't have to pay some U.S. taxes. But if the president acts on his own, he could open himself up to charges he's rewriting the tax code and overstepping his authority. Both parties agree something should be done about the problem, but Republicans say the U.S. needs to cut its corporate tax rate, which is the highest in the industrialized world. The controversy comes as President Obama hit an all-time low approval rating in the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll at 40%, with a disapproval rating of 47%. Congress only has a dismal 14% approval rating, and 71% say America's economic problems are due to the inability of elected officials here in Washington to get things done to improve the economy. Well, it turns out all those stories you hear about fish and how it's good for your brain are true. A new study finds that eating fish once a week can improve your brain health. The research focused on people who ate fish once a week, either baked or grilled, but not fried. They had more gray matter in the parts of the brain associated with memory and thinking. The study did not find a link between the omega-3 fatty acids in fish and brain health. With the number of cases of dementia and Alzheimer's growing, researchers are looking for ways people can improve their lifestyles and diets to keep their brains healthy as they get older. Pat, you're healthy and your memory is great. I take it you probably eat a lot of fish.
Well, I've got a mind like a fish, absolutely. And of course, yes.
A mind like a fish. You do take fish oil.
Yeah, you know, I have found something they have in the health food store. It's called Norwegian cod liver oil.
I take that, but I don't take it every day. I just take it when I need a boost.
Oh, I
should
take
it
every day. Yeah, I mean, you
Okay.
take about a teaspoon, all you need to a tablespoon. But it doesn't have that fishy taste. They've got a little lemon or something in it, so it doesn't. Some of it is just ghastly. I mean, you just.
But what's your favorite if you go to for seafood? Mine's salmon. What do you like?
I like scallops. See, there's a restaurant here that have the best scallops known to man. I mean, they're just unbelievably delicious. And there's a special way you're supposed to cook them. And when you learn, you know, how you do it and how you process them, they're supposed to be kept on burlap and
Garlic and butter and.
well, the whole thing,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I like them. But we have flounder here, delicious flounder, and the seas are full of them, and they're good.
I love fish too.
You might want to think about changing your online passwords after a report that Russian computer hackers have stolen 1.2 billion computer usernames and passwords. The thefts affect more than 400,000 websites. The New York Times reported the story based on the findings of Hold Security, a firm that has uncovered online security issues in the past. The names of the websites that were broken into were not identified, but it's just the latest example of security issues when it comes to protecting people's online information. It's a big day for legal cases on same-sex marriage. A federal appeals court in Cincinnati will hear arguments from 4 states on the issue. The cases in Michigan and Kentucky involve rulings that struck down their bans on gay marriage. The Ohio argument deals only with recognizing gay marriage from outside the state, and the Tennessee cases focus only on 3 same-sex couples. Judges have repeatedly been ruling in favor of gay marriage in recent cases. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.